Okay.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Good Erev Shabbos. Topic of child custody in halacha is unfortunately very, very important today because of the high rate of divorces that we're seeing in the Jewish community. And that might be a topic for a separate discussion. One of the interesting side jobs that I have is to be an expert witness in the New York City court system in terms of Jewish education when it comes to divorce cases where parents in a divorce situation don't agree which school to send their child to. And this happens, unfortunately, in situations where one of the parents has gone off the derech, so to speak, and they've agreed to send the child to a Jewish school. Question is, which Jewish school? A more religious school, less. Anyhow, it's a fascinating procedure, and I can talk about that separately, perhaps. But there is a number of questions that come up in terms of child custody within a Jewish framework as part of the get process. The general rule that everybody follows, at least tries to follow, is that we try to do what's in the best interest of a child. And how do we define what is the best interest of a child? And again, we are sometimes at a conflict between the secular courts and the Jewish courts on this matter. The Gemara teaches us that kashin hagerushin, divorce is a very difficult procedure. There are a lot of challenges, and especially when it comes to making custodial arrangements. Who do the children live with? What's in the best interest of the child? And Beis has to make these determinations. The key question is, to what extent is the decision of the Beis enforceable in a secular court? And here, the Gemara is already aware of this. It quotes the Psukim, Shoftim v'Shotrim. Moshe was told to appoint judges and also officers, people to enforce the law. And the Gemara says, if ain't shoter, ain't shofet, if there's no authority and no police authority to enforce the law, then the law basically ceases to exist. So in our situation, we have the secular court system, we have a Beis Din system, and to make a long story short, without going through all the details, the only way that the decisions of the Beis Din can be enforced in a secular court is if the Beis Din is considered to be a court of arbitration. It's called collaborative arbitration. It's an arbitration process where both parties and their attorneys work together to come up with a solution which is enforceable as an arbitration agreement. Sometimes it involves appointing a guardian to advocate for the children that both attorneys and both sides are comfortable with. Basically, they're turning the decision of the Beis Din into a parental allocation agreement that is signed by both parties and agreed to by the secular courts. So what we have basically today in reality is that the decision of the Beis Din is enforceable in the secular courts because it's regarded as an arbitration agreement that is signed by both parties and agreed to, and therefore the court system will accept it. So that's number one, that we can enforce the Beis Din in a secular court system if they both did it as a form of arbitration. Now, the next question is, what's considered the best interest of the child? Where should the child be? With which parent? Or how do we set that up? According to the Gemara, a daughter should remain with her mother all the time. It's important for a young girl to learn how to be a Jewish woman in terms of tznius, in terms of things that a woman has to know in a household, etc., etc. And this is primarily talking about an orphaned daughter whose mother has passed away. And the Gemara deals with, should she go to her father's relatives? And the Rosh chimes in and says, well, this applies to divorce as well. And this is normatively the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, that in a divorce situation, the girl should remain with the mother. What about a son? So again, a lot of interesting opinions among Rishonim. The Rambam says that the mother can determine what's best for her son as well. And she has something called residential custody of all children, boys and girls, up until the age of 6. Residential custody means the children must live with her up to the age of 6. Again, this is what the rabbis will agree to in Bezdin, and through the arbitration process may be somewhat different, but this is the Rambam's psak, that any child under the age of 6 requires a mother's care. Beyond the age of 6, however, a son should go to the father to live with him, because that's the father's job to teach him Torah and how to daven and eventually how to put on tefillin, etc. So these are some of the Talmudic considerations for where a child should be. Again, all of this goes out the window if in the arbitration agreement both parents agree to do things differently. And in terms of how many days the child stays here, how many days the child stays there, and the rights of visitation of a non-custodial parent in halacha. Again, it's fascinating to read how the poskim deal with what they consider is the child's best interest in terms of whose influence will shape the child, the mother's influence or the father's influence. Now, again, I don't know. I'm fairly certain that among all the poskim, when they're dealing with this subject, they're dealing with a situation where both parents are shomrei Torah mitzvos. It becomes much more difficult when one parent is not.
Rabbi?
Yes.
So I understand the importance of, being shomer mitzvahs and stuff like that. Do the rabbis deal at all with what if the mother or even the father are, quote, bad people? Forget religion for a minute.
Yes. And that's a very, very tricky issue. I'll tell you, Ma'aseh Shahaya, I was involved in a court case last year. There was a Satmar couple, and the wife went off the derech. I mean, really, really off the derech. And they had a 3-year-old child. And for some reason, again, child being as young as he was, the child was given to the mother. But the mother was totally not only non-religious, anti-religious, to the point that the nursery school where he went, the nursery school had to take off his yarmulke and tzitzis before he went home because the mother would throw it in the garbage. And that was a very difficult case. They agreed that he would go to a Jewish school or a nominally Orthodox school. And I was called in to determine what's in the child's best interest in terms of which school he should attend. And fortunately, after a long the judge agreed with me. But why that it would even allow the child to be with this mother at all when she is so anti-religious, I never understood that. But apparently that was the decision. And this child was going to need therapy for a long time. because he loves davening in the Satmar Shtipel with his father on Shabbos. But during the week, I don't even know if he eats kosher. It's a serious, serious problem that we have today when the secular courts and the religious courts are at loggerheads in terms, again, 3 years old, a child should be with its mother. But what if the mother's values are antithetical to this child's welfare from a religious perspective? Well, the court is not so quick to step in there. Beis Din, yes, but the court not. So that's why some of the poskim are more rigid than others, perhaps, because they understand that sometimes you could have a situation where it's not always in the child's best interest. And how do you determine that is the sticking point. There are those who criticize the Rambam.
How old was that child that you referred to?
3.
3, okay, so he was still
And Charles was in a
yeah.
school program, and thank God he's still in a frum yeshiva, not Hasidish, but at least Orthodox. And hopefully this child is going to be very, very mixed up because his mother is totally anti-religious. I mean, totally anti-religious. And I just supposed to, just to go off on a bit of a tangent, the mother was represented pro bono for free by a very, very prestigious law firm in New York City. And they brought down lawyers, and they had about 15 people from their office in the court. And they knew that if they won that case, it would open the floodgates for all the anti-religious people who left religious life. And that's why they represented her for free. Whereas the Satmar Chassid had a mom and pop law firm from people representing him. But I was able to convince the judge that the kid should at least remain in a frum environment when he's in school during the day. When he goes home, that's a different issue. And she had custody for half the week, and the father has it for half the week. It was a very unfortunate situation. But in general, we say when a child should be with the mother, we're assuming the mother will live a Torah life. When the mother doesn't live a Torah life, then it becomes very problematic. When the child turns 6, the Rambam is very clear that he has to go to the father as a residential parent, residential custody, because that the father has to teach the child Torah, which is a primary obligation of the father, and that fits into the best interest of the child consideration. Now, Lamaisa today, we follow the Rashba and others that, again, younger children stay with the mother for psychological reasons or physical reasons, daughters especially. But all of these are subject to reevaluation on a case-by-case basis and analysis. And that's why you have child advocates. That's why you have people appointed by both sides. The Radvaz, talking about the situation that I was involved in, says very clearly that a divorced mother that was not particularly observant and her lifestyle was antithetical to Torah values, it would be better for the mother not to have custody of the daughter in those circumstances. Okay? In a similar vein, Rav Gedalia Felder, a contemporary posek, passed away a few years ago, that when a boy above the age of 6 still might have a psychological need to live with the mother, then he can remain with the mother and doesn't have to move out just to fit the letter of the law. He says that the Beis Din has to consider the psychological fitness of the respective parents, especially if one parent, for example, might be abusive. That children have to be raised in the most healthy and nurturing environment. And again, the Beis Din's ruling is accepted as an arbitration agreement by the secular courts in almost every case. Again, it's a very slippery slope. What's in the best interest of the child in terms of the residential parent, custodial parent or not? And these are issues that are today really negotiated. The Beis Din today serves as an arbitration panel as far as the secular courts are concerned. And arbitration panels are accepted, their recommendations are normally accepted by the court system if both people agree to the arbitration process.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
So if I understood you correctly, according to the rabbis, children should stay with their mothers to the age of 6. And
Girls especially.
And then if it's okay with the son, he should go then live with his dad.
Correct.
My question is, does the Beit Din take into account at all separation of siblings? Because it could be as a brother and a sister, and they're going through enough trauma,
right?
Have a good sibling relationship. The Rabbanim are saying split them up.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. And these are not things that are written in stone. If you have twins or siblings, both under the age of 6, then they would be with the mother. What happens in most cases is that there is, in practical terms, in most situations, you have shared custodial rights. In other words, the children stay with the mother part of the week and the father part of the week. That's usually what works out today. Halakhically, they should be with the mother all the time until the age of 6. And then the son goes to the father. But you're raising the point, well, even after the age of 6, that sibling connection is still there. And that, again, all of these things are done on a case-by-case basis. What is usually done is that they share custodial rights and that both children spend part of the week with the mother and part of the week with the father. And that's what usually happens. After the age of 6, sometimes the children themselves will request not to go to one parent or to stay with another parent. And that is usually honored. And again, all of this depends if you have an amicable divorce. And I'm not sure if that's even possible in most, but we have an amicable divorce where the husband and wife realize that their own personal differences should not unduly affect the children more than the divorce itself is already affecting them. It can be worked out where you're literally doing things for the children's best interest. And parents know their children. Now, if it's not an amicable divorce, then that's when the Beis Din becomes more active, or the secular courts might become more active. In many cases, they appoint a court-appointed guardian, or a guardian ad litem, a GAL, to make a determination, and the court would usually accept that determination. And again, that's why they bring in experts to make it to hear. Like in my situation, when they wanted to know what is the best school for a child, so they heard testimony. I gave testimony, and both attorneys questioned me, and the judge questioned me, and then the process went on for a few more weeks or months, and ultimately the court decided to follow my recommendation. Doesn't always happen that way. And it's a very tricky business because people aren't always honest. In this particular case, the mother did not dress modestly at all. Very inappropriately when she came to pick up the kids from the yeshiva. Very inappropriately dressed. But when she was in court, she was dressed very modestly. Because she had to make a good impression on the judge. And there was no jury in this case. So again, from a halakhic perspective, parenting is a responsibility that has to be taken seriously. The halakha recognizes the value of each parent's participation in the child's life, and the rabbis are not in favor of one parent moves away from the other, from where the child is living. It's important to remain in geographical proximity, but in today's society, that is sometimes very difficult given the increase in travel today or jobs across the country and so forth. or to get remarried, to move away. But in most cases, parents usually reside in the same geographical area. When it doesn't, that can cause problems. If one parent is in California and one is in New York and schlepping kids by plane back and forth, it can be not only problematic, but traumatic as well. So there's residential custody, and there's also ultimately legal custody, which is a different category, but basically which parent has primary authority to make the decisions regarding schooling, health, extracurricular activities, even religious standards. Who has the right to make that determination? Ideally, it would be made together, but an ideal situation would not have resulted in the divorce in the first place. The Bezdin may assign primary legal custody in a certain area, like you can determine which school and you can determine the clothes. I mean, they can divide up responsibilities. Again, the best interest of the child, from a psychological or religious welfare perspective, is a very slippery area to make the determination. And that's why Dayanim have to be very, very knowledgeable and very sensitive. Bezdin sometimes has to be the tiebreaker, so to speak. And if two parents are unable to agree upon a school or upon a doctor or upon a religious level of observance, sometimes the Bezdin has to intervene. And these are very difficult decisions to make. Custody determinations are very contentious, especially if the divorce was acrimonious. If you look at the decisions of the Bezdin, the ones that are written up, constantly urging parents not to use their children as as proxies in their battles against each other. Sometimes attorneys can misrepresent the facts, and sometimes rabbinic advocates can, again, because they want their side to win. So the Dayanim have to be very, we'll say in Pirkei Avos, you have to be mesunim badin, very deliberate. You have to be very, very careful when you make a psak din, because you're dealing with din in the foshos. You're dealing with the lives, the profound impact of the future lives of these children. It's a very big responsibility, very big responsibility. You also have to be aware of changing circumstances that might affect the children. And that's why the Bezdin, in most cases, is not just involved in the psak din, goodbye, have a nice day, but they stay involved with the parties for many years down the road, because this is a process. It takes a while. And children are part of that process. As they get older, things might change. And the Bezdin has to be aware about these changes in terms of custody, in terms of visitation schedules and arrangements. And you have to be patient. It's a long process. So before every Bezdin meets, that they pray for a siyata d'shmaya. They pray for assistance from Hashem, from heaven, in making these decisions. Because when you're dealing, these are dinei nefashos. And even when the secular court system accepts the decision of the arbitration panel, which the Bezdin is today, nevertheless, you need very, very broad shoulders, not just to make psak halacha in general, but you're dealing with the lives of children and how they will grow up and what kind of adults they will turn into. A lot depends on which parent they grow up with. And not every divorce is an amicable divorce. And
Wally,
it's a big, big responsibility. Yes.
suppose conditions changed after the decision is already made.
Then they have to revisit it.
They can go back to court, or one parent
Yes.
can take the other one back to the base din.
Yes. In most situations of divorce, it's not a one and done type of thing. It goes on for a long time. It goes on for a very long time, especially when you're dealing with young children. The status of a child at 2 or 3 years old is very different than the status of a child when he's 8 or 10 years old. And then when the child is a teenager. And so the Bezdin is generally involved it's a long, schlepped out process. Now that, again, if it's an amicable divorce and everybody agrees what's in the best interest of the child, then there's no problem, there's no friction. But unfortunately, most divorces happen because there's friction, because it's not amicable, because they disagree on religious or social or other issues. And when these divorces take place, it affects the children very deeply. Most children of divorce wind up in therapy, or should wind up in some kind of a therapy to deal with the change in their lifestyle. And the Bezdin has a role to be involved for many, many years, because situations do change. So it's not, and even in the secular court system, if the court system said the child remains with the father because the mother is a drunkard or whatever the case may be, and what if she cleans up her act and she goes to Alcoholics Anonymous and she's off the booze, she can go back to Bezdin and claim, well, now I'm sober, I want my child back. So the process starts all over again. Meantime, the child has moved on and may not want to go back to them. So it's not, at the one says Kushin Gerushin. Divorce is a very difficult process because it's a process. It's not a 1, 2, 3 and finished deal. It goes on and on and on. And unfortunately, the trauma that children experience as children carries through with them for a very, very long time. And anybody who's been through a divorce will tell you that the long-lasting effects on children take a very long time to go away, if they ever go away at all. And that's why a Bezdin has to be very, very sensitive. And that Nakuda, that aspect of knowing what's in the best interest of a child is sometimes flexible and can change. It may be the best interest of a child to do X, and 5 years later, it may be Y. And that's why hopefully we'll have a diminution of divorces, because divorces are bad on so many. Sometimes it's necessary to get a divorce, but the children, unfortunately, suffer the most. And the child custody that the Bezdin has to deal with is an awesome, awesome responsibility. Sometimes it's very clear in black and white that a child belongs with one parent rather than the other, and the other one just gets visitation. Other times it's not clear at all, because you have competing rights, you have competing desires, and when children are used as pawns, that makes it even worse. And I've been in court a number of times in these situations. I tell you that it's not pretty. Yeah.
Well, Ollie,
Yes.
do we have any statistics on children that have shared custody between one parent that's from and the other parent that's not, and the child is going to the non-from house for Shabbosim? What's the statistics of them remaining from? I would see the exposure there for a kid that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't see that the outlook would be very good for them.
No, the outlook is not very good, but more significant than the religiosity of the child being destroyed, so to speak, in the non-observant home, is the psychological trauma that this child is undergoing every week.
But why does the courts respect that in a way? In other words, if most of these kids do not turn out to be from, right? The courts just don't respect the religious aspect of things.
No, they can't. The court can't get involved in the religious aspect unless you have a court-appointed guardian who will say that this sweep back and forth is traumatic, and cause psychological issues for the child, then the court can get involved. But the court generally is very loath to get involved in religious matters.
Rabbi,
Yes.
going back to the example that you gave with the Satmar couple, and she was like extremely off the derech. Other than after, going through the process to get a divorce, why in the world would such a woman, or sometimes such a man, depending, why would they care and even listen to a Beit Din?
The reason is financial, or it's part of the overall agreement in the divorce was that they agreed to send the child in order for all the other conditions to be met, whether it's alimony or whatever it might be. They agreed to send the child to an Orthodox day school.
Oh, okay.
And all the other issues were resolved, the financial issues, everything was resolved except what defines an Orthodox day school and how Orthodox does it have to be. Obviously, the father would like the kid to go to a Hasidic school. That wasn't going to happen. So they agreed on a modern Orthodox school to send the kid to. The mother wanted him to go to like a Solomon Schechter type school, which may have had some nominally Orthodox families going there. I doubt it, but anyway, that was the argument that she used. And as it turned out, I visited both schools. I submitted a report, but it's fascinating though. When I was called to the witness stand, the judge would not let me use my notes. I had notes, I had pictures. Just answer the questions.
Wow.
Wally,
Yes.
I have a good idea for you. Okay, listen. When young people now get married for the last so many years, practically every single one of them signs an halacha prenup.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right? I know we just went through that now. Also, my daughter got married the last month. Okay, so now they should also sign an agreement between husband and wife that if one of them does not want to be religious any longer, that the one that's religious has total control of the child in terms of the school, the yeshivas, and the religiosity of that child.
Okay. That's
never gonna happen. Never.
Well, no, if they're both religious at the beginning, there's no reason why they won't both sign it.
Yeah.
It's after they change, they have a change of heart. But
the only problem is the court system would be very hesitant to get involved in enforcing a religious document like that, because they can't get involved in religious items. Custody, yes, but the religious aspect of it, they can't rule on that.
it's a written agreement. It's like a business deal.
Yes, but it's a written agreement that deals with religion, and the court cannot get involved in religious issues. Your idea is a great idea. They should sign it anyway, and maybe the whoever the judge might say we can't rule on it, but you should take it seriously or something like that. I don't know, but the court will not rule on a religious issue.
Well, how do the courts look at prenups? Halachic prenup? Does it have any weight at all in the court?
But the halachic prenup, again, the way it's written, it basically is a legal document that has nothing to do with religion. It simply says that if you get divorced and you have not received from the time you get divorced until you get a religious divorce, you're not living together. He has to pay X amount of dollars per day to his ex-wife. That agreement is enforceable, not in terms of they can't force him to give a get, but they can force him to pay each day he doesn't give a get. Again, there's a little nuance there. So, but in some places there is a difficulty in enforcing that prenuptial agreement, which is why it may be the best document out there to prevent aguna, but it's not perfect. It's the best that we have. And most cases, the court can enforce the financial aspect of it, but not the religious aspect of it. The system, again, is not yet perfected. I don't know if it can be, given our current law separating religion and secular government. So, hopefully,
Wally,
people shouldn't have divorces. Yes.
why did the judge not allow you to refer to your notes?
You'd have to ask the judge. That's all I
Okay.
can tell you. I was called to the stand with all my documentation, which the attorneys had, and she said, "Just answer the questions." And her lawyer had questions for me, the judge had questions for me, and the husband's attorney, and I mean, I referred. I couldn't refer to my note. I couldn't show pictures or documents. I just had to answer the questions, which I did. But I guess that's what I guess only the attorneys are allowed to introduce documents into evidence as a legal procedure, I guess. So referring to my notes would be in that category.
I see.
You learn a lot about law being a witness.
You lucky they didn't put you in jail.
I didn't violate anything. If I had not done what the judge told me, she could have held me in contempt and she could have fined me. But that didn't happen, and I'm glad she agreed with my ultimate decision. And the kid is in it. But the kid, as I said, this particular child, a lovely, lovely boy, but he's going to need therapy for a very long time after he grows up, because what his mother is doing to him is unconscionable. She should just get rid of the kid, give it to the father, and say, you know what, I made a mistake, and let the child grow up with his father in a Satra environment, because that's what the child is happy doing. Very, very sad. Divorce is always sad, can I tell you? Okay. Any other questions?
On that happy note.
On that happy note, yes. Have a wonderful Shabbos,
Have a great Shabbos.
and appreciate your spouses.
Wally, you can't assume every judge is an Or of Yisrael. You know, so many of them are anti-religion.
Yes, that's true too. That's
Right.
but I
Mendy Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
Good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos.
Good
Thank
Shabbos.
you.
Good Shabbos.
good
Have a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Thank you, Wally.
Good Shabbos.
And the grandchild?